Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Now, Tulsi Gabbard, everybody. Tulsi Gabbard 4 years ago. And maybe, just maybe, that little 40-second tirade is the reason why Tulsi Gabbard is on the terror watch list and being followed every time she gets on a plane, reportedly. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show. It's Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant. He returns on Wednesday. Thanks for being here on this Monday, August 5th, 3 months away from an election that is the most important election in the history of our country. 91 days and change until that election. Some of you will be voting in September and October. And if you can, bank your vote. I encourage you to do that. We are watching several different stories today as there appears to be a coordinated attack against the state of Israel, which so far Israel is weathering that attack. There is a considerable question about the financial markets and the stability in our financial markets today, because there are questions about the stability and the fragility of our economy. And we've been talking about that for a long time now, haven't we? And now here it is. And there are concerns that there will be a recession, and a bad one, which would not be good for anybody. The recessions will hurt the people who can afford it least the most. It's not a good thing. So we're watching that story. We're watching the clips from yesterday and the Sunday morning talk shows, which I will get into, the situation with Byron Donalds and what he did with George Stephanopoulos, which was a wonderful thing to observe. I have a clip from Robert Kennedy Jr. that just might explain why he's down in the 4 or 5% polling area right now, and it might even go lower. But I played that clip from Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, who has kind of renounced the Democrat Party, even though she for years and years and years was a faithful, loyal Democrat, served in Congress, served in our military, volunteered to serve. Let's remember, everybody who serves pretty much volunteered. I don't think we have too many people back from the Vietnam era who were drafted still in active duty. It'd be pretty doubtful. But Tulsi Gabbard has great respect for me. A lot of people were hoping she'd be Donald Trump's running mate. I was nervous about that because you always wonder if that Democrat gene is still lurking inside you, inside them. And so, I was kind of tenuous about my endorsement of Tulsi Gabbard. If you think I'm wrong on this, we apparently have fixed the phones. You're welcome to discuss 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Jasmine's on the phone, so be nice. Behave yourselves. Today, there is a story, a headline story on uncoverdc.com. They do real journalism there. It's not a big site, but it is a site that does real digging to get a story. And the story reads, exclusive. Federal Air Marshal whistleblowers, not one, several, report Tulsi Gabbard actively under surveillance via Quiet Skies program. Now, just think about this. So Tulsi Gabbard, at the very first Democrat debate, goes right after Kamala Harris and takes her apart. It was surgical, that strike. And it really did zing. And then Hillary Clinton wondered if Tulsi Gabbard was a Russian spy. Remember, she speculated that Tulsi was like a Russian asset. Kind of amazing. And yet it was out there. She didn't say it in exact words. She kind of hinted at it. But this story out of Uncover DC, I believe, This happened after Tulsi Gabbard went after Kamala Harris, and that clip keeps running. Several federal air marshals, whistleblowers, have come forward, and they say they have information that Tulsi Gabbard currently enrolled in the Quiet Skies program. Do you know what the Quiet Skies program is? This sounds like it's conspiracy stuff, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, that's Quiet Skies. Well, that's what we were told when we talked about Crossfire Hurricane. But Quiet Skies is a thing. It is a TSA program, a surveillance program that has its own compartmentalized watch list. This is from the reporting on Uncover DC by Wendy Strauch Mahoney. She does good work there. So the TSA has its own suspected terror watch list, other than whatever everybody else has. And why? Isn't the siloing of information what got us into trouble from September 11th, 2001, because we weren't sharing information? So Homeland Security has a special siloed list of this crazy story. It is so insane. Now, the Quiet Skies program, as I said, is their surveillance program that they use to investigate potential January 6th suspects and their families. And they tell us that they have this program to protect every American who's traveling from suspected domestic terrorists. And the reporting includes, from the whistleblowers, a screenshot of Tulsi Gabbard so that everybody could see who she is. Everybody who's looking on the Quiet Skies program could identify her. Now, this is from a group that's called the Air Marshal National Council, the AMNC. It is an advocacy group for the federal air marshals, and according to their executive director, at least one of the whistleblowers is ready to go on the record with documentation of what they found. They claim that Tulsi Gabbard is unaware that she is being monitored and followed. Now, you're saying, wait a minute, they're actually following her? Yeah, well, when she books a flight, it must tick something on a computer somewhere, and TSA then assigns two, not one but two, explosive detection canine teams, one transportation security specialist in the area of explosives, one plainclothes TSA supervisor, 3 federal air marshals on every flight she boards. Now think about that. First of all, how many people are on the list? And how many people are getting the same treatment? If this reporting is true, and Wendy Strauch Mahoney is fairly credible in my history of following her work and talking to her in the past, they're saying that every time Tulsi Gabbard gets on a plane, TSA makes sure they have deployed 2 explosive detection canine teams, a federal transportation security specialist in explosives, a plainclothes TSA supervisor, and 3 federal air marshals on every flight. This is astounding. Is this because they're trying to destroy Tulsi Gabbard, or is this some sort of retribution? Tulsi Gabbard, Congress is not in session today. You would hope that there would already be some letters going out right now saying, hey, the minute we get back, we have to talk about this. The director of the Federal Air Marshals Group, the Air Marshal National Council, talks about the whistleblowers and that they believe that TSA and Homeland Security are violating the constitutional rights of the citizens in this surveillance grab. Now, this is a big stinking deal, especially when you consider the effect Tulsi Gabbard might have on so many of the upcoming debates, that Tulsi Gabbard might have a way to be a swing voter I guess, surrogate for Donald Trump. She has supported Trump in the past. She's speaking about Donald Trump being the only guy who could really straighten things out right now, especially globally. So are they trying to silence Tulsi Gabbard? But she didn't know this surveillance was upon her. I'm just astounded by the amount of people we have committed to one person, and I'd like to know how many other people are we surveilling this way? How much money are we spending on this? How much wasted time? And this is part of this program has been going on for a while. Almost a year ago, the same reporting uncovered a story of a guy named A.J. Fisher, who has an infant son who is enrolled in the program because his father attended January 6th protests. Another January 6th attendee, Brian Smith, served 20 years in the government with unblemished service. He's also on the list. And Christine Crowder, who is the wife of an active air marshal, is on the list. Why? She was in D.C. and did not attend the protest, but she was there, so they've been following her. Tulsi Gabbard. She has too much potential sway with Trump voters, especially the suburban moms, especially those who wonder if the Democrat Party is still for them because they've gone so far left. Tulsi Gabbard. She's gone on the record against Kamala Harris. Just recently on the Laura Ingraham show, Tulsi Gabbard talked about it. It's not. Here you go, Tulsi.
I'm more interested, Laura, in what the American people are thinking. You know, I've been seeing headline after headline saying, well, what is Kamala Harris's foreign policy going to be? And then you are reminded by these examples of how inexperienced and lacking of knowledge and strength that she is. So to answer that question, what kind of commander-in-chief will she be? What kind of foreign policy will she have? We simply need to look at the facts of what we've seen under the Biden-Harris administration. They are not running our foreign policy. Our foreign policy decisions are being made by unelected people in the military-industrial complex who are...
So you come out and say that our foreign policy decisions are not being run by the Harris-Biden administration, but by unelected officials in the military-industrial complex who are profiting from us being in a constant state of war. Yeah, I think that would get you put on the watch list, on the must-follow list, on the list that has several agents following you all the time. Wow. It's an amazing story. I've posted it on my Twitter X account, link to it. I encourage you to read it. There's good stuff going on. There's real journalism out there. Not something we see every single day. Happy to see it. It's only there. I wonder how much farther it will go. And let's hope some of the people who are back home in their districts, some of the members of Congress who are back home in their districts will pick up this story and maybe hold a hearing or two about it. And I'd like to know how much money we're spending sending 5 people to follow Tulsi Gabbard every time she gets on a plane. That can't be cheap. Really, explosive experts? You consider her a threat to domestic tranquility, do you? So much to get to today. Your calls. The calls, we got the phones working, so we're going to be back talking to you about your calls, so hang in there. 888-630-9625 is the number. Still have Byron Donalds coming up. Still have the wildest story I've heard out of the Robert Kennedy camp yet, and he has told a bunch of wild stories. We got to get to that today as well. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
It is The Chris Plant Show on a Monday. Welcome to it. Mike Opelka in for Chris. He returns Wednesday from his cruise, which just looks like it was an absolute smash. Both he and Michael Piercy together on the cruise, which has produced some interesting social media posts. And you will be told all the wonderful stories upon his return. I am here trying to get to everything, and everything also includes so many of you who have joined us. Let's check in on the phones. Line one, Ivan in Florida. Hello, Ivan.
Michael, how you doing?
I'm good, sir.
Michael, if they do debate, I got a real quick couple zingers for Trump. Number one is it says, Kamala, if you can fix the border, why haven't you the last 4 years? Kamala, if you can fix the inflation, why haven't you the last 4 years? You've been in office for 4 years. How come you haven't done it? And the other one would be on the border. If and when there's another terrorist attack on U.S. soil, blame should be laid directly at your feet and Biden's feet for your policies and for allowing immigrants to come across the border. If there's a terrorist attack, it should be laid at your feet. And I think that'll just floor it.
You know, Ivan, you probably have a very successful career ahead of you in political consultancy, because pollster Frank Luntz has said that he has a 10-word question that Donald Trump can use to defeat Kamala Harris. If he just asks the voters, can you name one thing she accomplished as vice president? And I think you've nailed it, because you talked about the border specifically. We talked about terror. You know, it's about safety, security, and the economy. If you can't fix inflation, you can't fix the border, you can't fix the global situation, you really shouldn't get the job as commander-in-chief. There's no on-the-job training. And she doesn't have the skills, the ability to do pretty much anything other than read a teleprompter, which she's capable of. Let's be honest. She can read a teleprompter. But if she's live, she's not good. Thank you, Ivan. Appreciate you being there. Good thoughts. Good thoughts. Let's grab one more here. Claudia is in Missouri. Hello, Claudia. Welcome.
Well, hi. I'm so glad to talk to all of your listeners. I just love them. And Ivan was right on. How cool is that? What I wanted to tell all your listeners is that Ben Carson did a speech. I think it was at Turning Point this weekend. I saw it on YouTube. And he gave a great speech, and he finished it off by saying this, and this is what was so heartfelt to me. He said, God has saved Donald Trump for something. He's not finished with him yet. So, Godspeed. And I just love all you guys. And you know what else I'm kind of bummed about is all the censorship on YouTube. And they only censor Fox. And this morning they even censored the one gold medal for golf. They wouldn't show his face standing there on the podium.
I'm up against the wall on the time thing here. But thank you, Claudia. You're right. Ben Carson, always a good speaker. I think that was 2 weeks ago, was the Turning Point event where he was speechifying. And that still is up on YouTube. It's Mike Opelka. We'll get into the madness of the Robert Kennedy speech, or the story he told to Roseanne. This was a weird one. That's coming up next on The Chris Plant Show.
This is The Chris Plant Show.
It is The Chris Plant Show. Welcome to it. Mike Opelka in for Chris. He returns on Wednesday. Thanks for being here. Trying to keep an eye on everything. Crazy day in the financial markets. Started out, Dow Jones dropped immediately 1,000 points. Japan's markets ended down 12% in one day. That's the worst drop ever. And it might have been worse, but they actually stopped trading. And it is about the uncertainty of our economic situation. The planet has some problems underlying all of the economics. You know, you can only print so much money for so long. And here we are. We'll see what the reaction is today, and I'm sure there's going to be a discussion about it. There is already talk from many in the financial world that, hey, we need a 3/4 point interest rate cut immediately. There may be an emergency meeting of the Fed. How about we stop spending so much money, too? And how about we stop putting so many federal assets on people like Tulsi Gabbard when she takes a plane trip? This is a crazy story. If you missed it, I posted a link to it on the story on uncoverdc.com. But I also saw this story, and it is kind of one of the craziest stories of the weekend. And he is a presidential candidate, currently now getting Secret Service protection. Although you have to wonder if the administration will reconsider after this story breaks out. It's from Robert Kennedy Jr. And he posted it on his own Twitter X account. He posted it in response to an anticipated story that was coming out in the New Yorker magazine. The story is about Robert Kennedy. I think it's 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. And he and a bunch of buddies were going falconing. They were going to go, I guess, play with falcons, because that's like what really rich people do. They play with falcons, falconing, up in upstate New York. But he's telling this story to Roseanne Barr, which is really bizarre to me. And it's in somebody's home, in somebody's dining room. And on the table there appears to be containers filled with various sides from a barbecue joint, paper plates, plastic cutlery. And in one big tray there, it looks like there's some ribs. So it looks like it's a great barbecue joint they found. And they're having the meal. And Kennedy is sitting in this chair while Roseanne's walking around. And he's telling a story. And we have to walk through the story because it's just plain bizarre. Robert Kennedy talking about taking a bunch of friends and going falconing.
I was taking a group of people falconing up in Goshen, New York, up in the Hudson Valley. And I was supposed to meet them there at like maybe 8 or 9. I was driving up maybe, really early, like 7. And that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator.
Now, wait a minute. So here's Robert Kennedy Jr., the son of Robert Kennedy, possibly he was almost the presidential candidate before he was assassinated, one of the Kennedy brothers. Robert Kennedy Jr., nephew of John Kennedy, the president. And his dad was John Kennedy's brother. The other brother was Senator Ted Kennedy. So this American royalty, as Democrats like to call them, the Kennedy family, this is like 10 or 12 years ago. He's driving to upstate New York to go falconing. And the car in front of him hits a bear and kills it. And so he jumps out of his car and says, wow, there's a bear. There's a dead bear. I could skin that and have a bear skin. And he also adds, and I could take the meat and put it on my refrigerator. Now, I know there are people who do respect roadkill or actually use roadkill for food, but you're a Kennedy, for God's sake. And does anyone eat bear? Have we ever heard anyone eating bear? I know we talk about deer meat, and deer meat feeds a lot of people. And Ted Nugent makes a whole bunch of deer meat available to poor people. His foundation gives away something like 250,000 servings of deer meat every year, gives it away. I've never heard bear meat. So Kennedy is driving. The lady in front of him hits a bear, kills it. It's a young bear. He didn't say cub, he said young. And he said, you're allowed to do this, apparently, in New York State. You can get a tag for a bear if you killed the bear. Are you allowed to do it after the fact, or don't you have to get that tag before? I don't know. Not a hunter that way. So he's telling this story about his first instinct as he's driving up into Goshen, New York, to go falconing, is to take the roadkill and put it in his car. In the back of his van, I guess. And then it got weirder.
You can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for a roadkill bear. And so then we went hawking, and I had the bear in my car. And then we had a really good day, and we went late. We were catching a lot of game, and the people really loved it, so we stayed late. And instead of going back to my home in Westchester, I had to go right to the city because there was a dinner at Peter Luger's Steakhouse.
So Kennedy said after their day of hunting and falconing and hawking or whatever they were doing, he's driving back and they were running late, and he didn't stop at his house and take the bear out and put it in his fridge or skin the bear as he said he was going to do. He said he had to drive to a dinner at Peter Luger's. Now, this is where it starts to diverge from reality for me. You've got this guy talking about picking up roadkill and he's going to use it for food. And then he talks about going to a dinner at one of the more expensive joints in New York at Peter Luger's Steakhouse. Is anyone sensing a disconnect with the truth here? And this is from the weekend. This is Robert Kennedy telling Roseanne Barr the story of how he came upon a dead bear and decided he was going to pick it up and put it in his van. And then hours later, because he got it in the morning, and now he's going to Peter Luger at night. So how long has that bear been dead in his van? And what must that smell like? And I think at this point, you're not going to be harvesting the meat. Not a good idea. Aside from the fact that nobody I know is eating bear meat. I'm sure somebody is. But so he tells the story. Okay, so we went to dinner at Peter Luger's Steakhouse. Again, a really expensive place to go eat steak. But you were earlier telling us how you're going to harvest the meat from a dead bear in a roadkill situation. This is really bizarro. These are the Kennedys we were told were America's royalty? I'm not sure about this.
And at the end of the dinner, it went late, and I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport. And the bear was in my car, and I didn't want to leave the bear in the car because that would have been bad.
Yeah, you think so? You leave a dead bear in your car at the airport, and you're going God knows where for how long? You got a rotting bear carcass in your car? I question the truth in this statement, in this story. I think there are some problems with this story, but wait, it's getting weirder.
So then I thought, at that time, this was a little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents in New York. They had just put in the bike lanes.
First of all, he prefaces this part of this weird spinning of this story by saying, this is the redneck in me. Again, this is a Kennedy. This is Robert Kennedy Jr. saying this is the redneck in me. There have been a series of bicycle accidents in New York and Central Park because they just put the bike lanes in. And again, he's claiming this is like 10 or 12 years ago. And I lived in New York at the time, and frankly, I don't recall the series of deadly bike accidents in New York, and I lived just 5 blocks off Central Park. It's really curious to me. But now he's telling the story of how they got rid of the bear carcass.
And so a couple of people had gotten killed, and it was every day, and people had gotten badly injured. Every day it was in the press. And so I thought, I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea. And I said, I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be fun and funny for people.
So Kennedy's quick to tell us, I wasn't drinking, of course. But the people with me were drinking, and they thought this would be a good idea for us to dump the bear in Central Park. And I said, hey, I got a bike that I've been meaning to get rid of. Somebody wanted me to get rid of this bike. Okay, who gives you a bike and says, hey, can you get rid of this old bike for me? And you put it in the back of your van, and you say, yeah, I'll probably do it when I get rid of the bear that I'll pick up, the dead bear. So they're going to put the dead bear with a bike, this old bike somebody had given him, in Central Park.
So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was like It was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper. And I turned on the TV, and there was like a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars. There were helicopters flying over it. And I was like, oh, my God, what did I do? And,
yeah, what did you do? It's like Uncle Ted saying the next day, what did I do? What did I do? And now Kennedy told us he was on his way to the airport. They were dumping the bear before he was going to the airport because he couldn't leave a rotting bear carcass inside his car when he went to the airport. But apparently he had friends with him, and they drove and dumped the bear in the park, and they left it with a bicycle. And then how many police resources were used because there was a dead bear in the park? How long did that investigation go on? They had a helicopter over it covering it, probably a newscopter, though, not a police copter, I'm sure. But you had a dead bear in the park with a bicycle. And where was he? Because didn't he say he was leaving town? There are so many holes in the story. It's such Swiss cheese.
And then there was some people on TV in Tyvek suits with gloves on lifting up the bike, and they were saying they're going to take this up to Albany to get a fingerprinted.
Uh-oh.
And I was worried because my prints were all over that bike. Luckily, the story died down after a while, and it stayed dead for a decade. And the New Yorker somehow found out about it, and they're going to do a big article on me, and that's one of the articles. So they asked me, the fact checker said, it's going to be a bad story.
Yeah, it's going to be a bad story because so much of what you've told us doesn't make any sense. And where's the lady who hit the bear? And who spilled the beads to the New Yorker? This is one of the craziest stories. And you wonder why all of us because there were people saying Donald Trump should pick Robert Kennedy as his running mate. This would be a great choice. Remember that? There were a bunch of people claiming to be Republicans saying, you know how we really stick it to the Democrats? You get Robert Kennedy as your running mate. And for those of us who said, worst idea ever, we finally got the answer. That is one of the craziest stories with so many holes in it. I doubt there's any truth to it. I can't wait to see what the New Yorker puts out. And Kennedy trying to get ahead of it is pretty much the most Kennedy thing he could be doing. But to think that Robert Kennedy wants us to believe, A, he's a redneck, B, he eats roadkill, and C, that it was his friend's idea, his drunk friend's idea, not his, because he doesn't drink, to put the bear in the park. It's just too much. And this is why he's at 4%, maybe 5%. And that was the craziest story of the weekend. By far. Gold medal crazy story. Crazy story. I can take one quick call on this because our friend Jason in Kensington is on the phone, line 2. Jason, you have a take on the RFK Jr. story?
Yeah, I think what he should have done was sort of like taken the bear for a drive and take it up to that bridge, the Chappaquiddick Bridge, and ran the car off the bridge and cover up the story with that, because by the sound of his story, it sounded like he had a few schooners in him, I think. And you can kind of tell when someone's making it up as they go along,
Yeah, something doesn't smell right about this story, and it's not the rotting bear. I think it's the rotting campaign of Mr. Kennedy. But he could have taken it. He could have driven it up to Chappaquiddick and just strap the bear in the car and put a brick on the accelerator and let the bear drive over what's left of the. I think the bridge is all gone now. But
they would at least bought him a little bit of time overnight to make up a feasible story anyway.
He had 10 years to come up with a story, and that's what he came up with?
It sounds kind of weird to me.
Yeah, very weird. Thank you, Jason. Great stuff. I got to take a break. It's Mike Opelka. You're welcome to join us. 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. It's the Chris Plant Show with me, Mike Opelka, in for Chris.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
bear, Yogi.
That's Boo Boo. Boo Boo Bear looking at Yogi. Yogi's dead in Central Park because allegedly some lady hit him, and then Robert Kennedy picked him up. I'm just wondering. It's Mike Opelka for Chris Plant. That is one of the wildest stories we've heard in this crazy campaign season. Oh, boy. I'm glad we had time to go through all of it, but apparently I'm wrong. I was checking social media during the break, and more than one of you has written to me about bear meat, but also on line 6, Nancy's in Arlington, Virginia. Nancy, you have a sampled bear meat in your past?
Yes, I have. I used to have a neighbor who used to go bear hunting every year, and he gave my husband and myself a bear roast, and it was good. So that's the only thing that Kennedy's got right.
Yeah, it's funny.
I wouldn't want him in the back of my car for 24 hours before I ate him.
Yeah, I just can't imagine driving around New York State with a bear in the back of your car for God knows how many hours. Whew! You're going to need a bear air freshener.
Yeah, but bears are edible. So
all right, well, I'm glad to...
I got right.
Well, I appreciate you, and Barbara also wrote in from Michigan about that. Thank you very much, Nancy. Appreciate you. Let's quickly grab Paul on line 1 in Hagerstown. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Micah. I just want to lend some credibility possibly to that Robert Kennedy bear story. I don't know if you recall earlier on, he told a story about having a worm in his brain. And earlier this year, there was a family that ate undercooked bear meat, and they were diagnosed with a brain worm disease. So I don't know. Maybe Robert Kennedy's been an avid bear meat eater all his life. Who knows?
Maybe he's been on the bear meat diet for so long, and eventually, it's a matter of time before you get a bad piece of bear meat, and that's where the brain worm came from. Paul, good
That's
speculation.
Right. Just a little undercooked bear meat will do it to you.
Yeah, you got to cook it at 165 degrees, people. Make sure it's not bear sushi or bear what is it? Bear tartare. You can't have that. Thank you, Paul. So many good stories on the bear meat. Yeah, I can't wait to see how this gets spun even further. He was not a serious candidate, and he would not have been a good running mate. It's Mike Opelka for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.